Hi, I'm Joe from Screw Innovations with another Night Power Sports product. This is our Honda Ultimate Kit for an ATV without the Hi-Lo Gear Selector. Inside the box, you'll see our thank you card, sticker, a link to this video here, and information about our safe box. You'll get the shift guide, the actuator, the components, the switches for the display lights to work. A lot more parts in here. The shift knob itself, the wire harness and screws and brackets, and the pull cable. So before we get started just taking the ATV apart and getting into it there's a little bit of assembly that's needed here. And we're gonna do that now so it's ready to go as you're working on your ATV. So first take the actuator and take the lid off. These short screws here will not be needed with the Ultimate Kit. They will be reused if you purchased the Sure 4 with side shifter kit. That does not come with the part that makes the display lights work. So I want to note that inside here you have a bearing and a shim, and they go on in that order. The shim goes on first, and then the bearing goes on top of that. We're going to put them to the side now, but you should note that's how those go. And we're going to take the pull cable and put it through the hole on the top of the actuator here, thread it into the actuator, tighten that down like that, pull out any slack with the cable that you can get, rotate it around and put the cable in the hole right there. Then you can pull out the extra slack from the other side of the cable just so that it's not going to be bunched up down there. Right, this adjustment here we're going to fine tune once it's on the vehicle. The other part that we want to do is put the O-ring on there. So inside one of the parts bags, you'll see the O-rings. This one has 3 O-rings for the Ultimate Kit. Take out one of these O-rings now and put it on the actuator so that you're prepared to install this after we take the electronic actuator out. So now we're ready to start taking the ATV apart to do the work on there. The first step is to put your ATV in 2-wheel drive if your actuator is working. Park it in your garage. The next step will be take the seat off, and then we're going to remove this whole center shroud here. There's no fasteners holding it in, it's just popped in like this. Pops out here, slides off of part of the plastics right here. Another top part on the side here and down here. There's one up here that pops it in and one on the side here. So kind of just got to go around it and pull on it carefully to get it to all come off. Don't force anything too hard. You don't want to break anything. Right, like that. Next, we're going to remove the footwell and the front fender. You're going to start by removing these push fasteners. You can use a tool like this, which pulls out the front part here. And then you can either pull it out or kind of pinch the back and push it out. Or you can use a flathead screwdriver, whichever you have, whichever works. These fasteners are in these locations here. There's one down here, up on top of the fender here. You need to take this one out. These ones right here. There's one hidden over here. And 2 here, 1 here, and 1 here. And then underneath also, you have one down here. It's not in here, but it would connect to the skid plate. And there's one up here that needs to be removed. That's all the push fasteners like this. Then there's 3 bolts. 1 bolt that would be right here that connects to your fender to your rack. And then the 2 bolts down there that are on your foot peg. Remove all of those and we'll pop these 2 fenders right off. The next step is to take the electronic actuator off. Follow the wire from the actuator This connector will be clipped on down here. You need to try to get behind it and push on this tab in order to get it to slide off of the frame there. And it has to come off of there. Once that does, then you can push down here and pull the connector apart. After that, you can remove the 3 screws that hold the electric actuator on. There's one over here. You can see where the socket goes. There's one down over here and another one over here. So I put a rag underneath it because some oil may come out of the differential. Pull the electronic actuator off. And the 2-wheel drive position is when that shaft is rotated all the way counterclockwise, like you see here. And if you were not in 2-wheel drive, so you can see it won't go any further. If you were not in 2-wheel drive, you're going to need to raise the front wheels up off the ground. You're going to have to rotate them in order to get it out of the position it's in. So right now, I'm rotating the wheels to get the gears to move so that I could put it into the diff lock position. So you can see now, this is the diff lock position. And if it's stuck and you can't rotate it out, you need to rock the wheels, roll the wheels, get the gears to move, and then it'll rotate. That's the 4-wheel drive position about there, all the way counterclockwise like that. Then I'm going to rotate it a little bit more, a little bit clockwise so that it is straight up and down, and that will allow us to slide the manual actuator right on there. So now we're going to install the manual actuator. The pull cable gets routed on top of the frame right in front of the gas tank. So right through here is where you're going to route this pull cable. And then you're going to push the actuator onto the differential. You can see the actuator is in the vertical position, just as we've put the differential already. So now it will slide together just like this. And you can see, push on that, make sure that it's locked in there. Now we're going to use the 3 supplied screws to mount this. They're in this bag that we took the O-ring from previously. They are the 3 gold colored screws. Take these 3 screws and mount the actuator to the differential. Now we're going to mount the pull cable to the frame over here. We're going to do that using the brackets from in this bag here. We're going to use this and this bracket, and we're going to use 2 screws out of this bag. That screw and that screw. We are going to first take the 1 nut on the cable, lower it all the way down so it's off of the cable, and screw this nut all the way up. We're going to take the bracket and line up the slot that's on the 2 parts so they are oriented the same way. Going to put the bracket over the frame here. So this top part goes over the frame. Oh, I had the cable inside it. Goes over the frame like that. And then this bottom part will go on, and I took that screw we took out before, and I'm going to start to thread that in now. I can rotate it a little so you can see here. So I'm threading it in right there. And you want this bracket to sit pretty flat. Doesn't have to be perfect, but try to line it up flat right now. Now you're going to take the cable and slide it through like this, through that slot, over top, push it down through, and take the nut and tighten it onto the cable. Right, now once this is tight and those plates are together like that, you can take 2 wrenches, tighten that down just a bit more, take a wrench, tighten that other screw we put in the back, and then install this screw. This screw hits the frame to stop this part from rotating, so make sure that it's straight like I said before. Thread this screw into the only hole that it can go into on this part. Get it up there, so now it's tight against the frame. and then I'm going to tighten that screw down with an Allen key after I tighten these nuts and that screw back there. Next, we're going to install the main lever. We're going to start with this push fastener from this bag. And this push fastener is going to go through the top hole on this lever, and it's going to go into this hole on your frame. That's going to line us up so that everything is where it needs to be. On some frames, there might be a bracket that comes out here, and if you have that, this would go behind that bracket, like inside it kind of thing. If you have that there, you'll know what I'm talking about. So let's push this push fastener in to the top of this part here, and then into that hole there, just like that. Next, we can take the bracket that goes behind the frame that we're going to bolt the other one to. This piece of foam that comes with it is, in case this is loose on your frame, you can peel the back of this, stick it in here, and that will tighten it up against your frame. We're going to use these 4 screws to attach this, but we're not going to install all of them just yet because another bracket needs to go on one of them. So we're going to put this behind the frame. I'm going to slide it up here. So it's behind the frame, I'm sliding it up, and I'm going to install all of the screws except for the top right one right now. So I got those 3 screws in. Don't tighten them down all the way yet because we may need to make minor adjustments there. The next step we're going to do is attach the cable to the lever. For that, you're going to need this screw, these 2 washers, and these 2 nuts, which came from this parts bag. We're going to put 1 washer on the screw right now. Then we're going to put this screw through the bottom, through the hole in the cable here, put the other washer on it, and then put one of the nuts on, and you're going to kind of be putting it on backwards to what you would normally do so that the flange is facing the end of the screw. Screw it in about that far and then slide it through the center hole. Actually wasn't far enough. I'm going to go a little further so that you have it like this, and then take the other nut and tighten it down here. And what that does is it allows the cable to move back and forth because every vehicle is a little bit different, and we needed more room there for this to move so that it is lined up straight with the pull cable here. That's what we're trying to achieve. You want the pull cable to be coming out straight so that it goes straight up and down when we shift this lever. So now we can tighten that down. Next, we're going to install these 2 large brackets. We're going to be using the 4th screw from the pack that we took out before that we used to mount this bracket. And we're going to be using one of the black button head screws that was in this bag. So the first step is going to be to get a 12mm socket and remove this bolt that holds your rack on right above your shock here. Next, we're going to install this bracket. It goes on in this orientation, the long flat here. The slight bend here at this end is going to attach to the T bracket. So take that bolt that we just took out before, go through and back into where it was, and just get that snug right now. Next, we're going to take the T bracket and use the screw that we mentioned before. This is going to go into the hole on top of this bracket here. So I had to loosen these 2 screws a little bit so that the bracket on the back came away from this front plate a bit, and then that caused that bracket on the back to slide over so that on this side here, it's all the way against this plate. That got me full engagement of this bolt into that nut there. So now everything is hand tight here, like that. I can take the button head screw and this bracket, line these 2 up, and put this in. Next, we're going to install the shift guide. We're going to use the last 2 screws from this bag. Take the shift guide, slide the lever through the shift guide, and now this is why we hand tightened everything. We're going to have to move things around a bit to get the holes to line up. We may need to move the bracket down here a little bit, pull on the shift lever a little bit, get one of these screw holes here to line up. This one, I'm pulling on the lever a bit, this will line up. Put these 2 screws in, move it around so that it feels like it's lined up properly, and then tighten up all of the screws that we have hand tightened before. Next step is to install the shift knob. The screw for that is in this bag with the shift knob itself. So we're going to take the shift knob out. The spring is inside it already. Slide it over this shaft. May need to push the shaft to the side a little bit to get it to go all the way down, just like that. Then take the supplied screw, put it in the top of the knob, push the knob down onto the shaft, and tighten the screw down. Next, we're going to shift it into 4-wheel drive and make the adjustments on the actuator. If you go to shift into 4-wheel drive and it won't go, don't ever force the lever. That's because the gears inside the differential are crashing. We need to rotate them a little bit to get them to slide together. So raise the front end up off the ground and rotate the wheels. And as you're rotating the wheels a little bit, just like this, should be able to, all of a sudden, it'll just slide nice and easy like that. Now you can see it easily moves back and forth. So now we have the shift knob in 4-wheel drive. We're gonna go make an adjustment on the cable to make sure that it is lined up in 4-wheel drive. We come down here and we want the line on the actuator here on the pulley to be lined up with the notch in the actuator housing here. That straight line there is 4-wheel drive. So we can see it's pretty close. This cable already had a little adjustment on it. We need to slide that rubber part off. Since I need the pulley to rotate clockwise more, I'm going to unscrew this a bit. And you can see as I unscrew this, it makes the pulley rotate clockwise. So make the adjustments to get that lined up, and then take this screw, this nut here, and tighten it down against this in order to lock everything from moving. Before we tighten that though, we're just going to then shift it into Diff Lock. Again, if you start to go to Diff Lock and it doesn't go, you're going to rotate the front wheels while pushing just a little bit of pressure on this knob, just trying to slide it. And you see it slides in nice and easy once the gears inside the differential lined up. So the actuator moved clockwise more. I am going to shift it back to 4-wheel drive now. And you can see the actuator moved. You move the wheels a little bit. You can see the gears just popped apart right there, and that's why the actuator moved the rest of the way. And then the same thing with 2-wheel drive. We go back to 2-wheel drive. If it didn't go all the way, it looks like it did there, it did. But if it didn't go all the way, just need to move a little bit, and that'll get it to move the rest of the way. One more time, I'm gonna just shift into 4-wheel drive. Make sure that this line is lined up like it is right there. Now I'm going to tighten that nut against the adjuster. Next, we're going to install the display light switches. The first step is going to be to put the shim and bearing back on your actuator. So first the shim goes over the shaft, just like I showed earlier, and then the bearing goes on the shaft. We have the actuator in the 2-wheel drive position, and that's what the 2-wheel drive position looks like. We are going to take the O-rings and screws out of this bag. We're going to first put an O-ring on the display switches housing, like this. Now you're going to rotate this part counterclockwise as far as it'll go. That'll get the flat piece looking like about this orientation. Then rotate this part clockwise just a bit so that that flat piece is in this horizontal orientation. And when we come down to the actuator, you can see that that flat piece there is going to slide into the groove in the actuator there. So now we're ready to do that. I'm going to try to push this on here carefully, and I'm rotating it a little bit so that the groove, the flat piece, will slide into that groove. Then you feel it slide in just like that, and now that's all the way on. Now we're going to put the lid on. We're going to take the last O-ring that's supplied, put this on the back of the lid just like we did on the other ones, and take these 4 screws and use them to fasten the lid and display switches to the actuator. Now those screws are tightened down, we're going to take the connector, the wire harness and connector that came from the display switches, plug it in where your electronic actuator used to be plugged in. You put dielectric grease on there now. Click that on and then either fasten it back down where it was originally or use some cable ties and zip tie it up out of the way to clean everything up down there. If you didn't get the ultimate kit with the display lights upgrade part, you would have just had a plug. So you still would have plugged something into where your electronic actuator went and then clean up those with some zip ties. Next, we're going to follow the wires from our 4-wheel drive Diff Lock button. They come down underneath this front part right here. This can be pretty difficult to get to, but you can get to it like this. You don't have to remove all this plastic, but you can if you need to. You might even be able to get to it from under the side a little bit. But what you're trying to get to is this orange connector here. This is what your 4-wheel drive button plugs into. So we're going to disconnect this, and then you can put dielectric grease on now. And then if you have the display lights upgrade kit, you'll get this connector with this jumper wire. If not, this would all just be plugged, and you're going to plug that in here now. And then this part comes with your side shifter, and this will plug in right here. What this does is connects to your 4-wheel drive button, and now you have the ability to use your 4-wheel drive button and your Diff Lock button as auxiliary switches. You could hook it up to a light bar, you could hook it up to underglow lights or anything you want, and when you push this button, it will turn those on and off. So now we have everything hooked up. Before we put it all back together, we're just going to test the function of everything. If you have your light bar connected, you can test this switch now, and that switch that would turn on a light bar, rocks, lights, whatever you decide to connect it to. We're going to see here, there's nothing showing on the display because we're in 2-wheel drive. We're going to shift to 4-wheel drive, and you see that that showed up on the display. And then we're going to shift to Diff Lock. Again, the knob won't go to Diff Lock right now, so I'm going to rotate the wheels a little bit while pushing on the lever just a little. Oh, I need to jack the front end up a bit more. Side wheel is on the ground. Now I'm going to rotate the wheels a bit, and it pops into Diff Lock. Then back to 4-wheel drive. See the Diff Lock light goes out. 2-wheel drive, and we're in 2-wheel drive. Everything's working. So now we can start to put it back together. First step is going to be to remove the jack, make sure everything is safe and secure here. Then we're going to put this fender back on. Now that this is on, I actually only have the one fastener holding it in right now, so I can still move it around. I'm going to get this footwell put in. All of the push fasteners are back in place. I'm going to put the foot peg back on with the 2 screws. Don't forget to put the 1 screw in that holds the fender to your rack here. Now we're ready to put the center plastics back on. We're going to remove the pocket that is in this spot here with the 2 Phillips head screws and 1 more of those push fasteners. So we got the pocket removed. Now 1 of the 2 Phillips head screws is going to go back in right where you took it out of, and the push fastener is going to go back in right there. Now we're going to remove the shift knob and the shift guide so that it's not in the way as we put the center plastics on. Take the center plastics and put them on, and now be mindful of the shaft that's coming out where your pocket used to be. Line everything up same way we took it off. Make sure that the parts that slide together, like the tabs down here, make sure those slide into the slots they go into. The tab over here slides in where it goes in the inside here. And then the push parts pop in here, 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 and up here. And the same on this side. One pops in here, one back here, down here, and one up here. Now we got the center plastics on. We can go ahead and put the shift guide back on using the 2 screws that were in it before. So if this is mounted a little crooked and you need to make an adjustment to fix it, I'll show you how to do that now. So I'm going to loosen the screws that hold the bracket, the main bracket, onto the frame back there, and then I'll be able to push on the metal part under the shift guide. I'm going to remove this again, and that'll get it into a better position so it looks a little bit better up there. So if you had to make a significant adjustment when we loosen the screws down there to get this straight, then you're going to need to take this back off, take the center plastic back off, and check the adjustment on your actuator again, and possibly adjust the cable to make sure that it's still lined up in 4-wheel drive. So the last step is to put the seat back on, slide it under, pop it down, and you're done. Now you're ready to go riding and enjoy your Honda Ultimate Kit.